I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. This happened when I was 17 on a night when my parents were out. Around 11 p.m., I was watching TV in the living room when I suddenly heard a knock at the front door. It was late and my body tensed up for a moment, but then I thought maybe it was just a friend playing a prank. I didn't open the door. Instead, I checked the doorbell camera. There was no one there. I felt a little uneasy, but I brushed it off as nothing and tried to focus on the TV. A few minutes later, I heard another noise, this time a light tapping sound coming from the back window. My heart dropped. Slowly, I walked over and peeked through the blinds. A man was standing there. He was just standing under the dim glow of a streetlight, staring at me, as if he was waiting for me to open the window. Then, the moment our eyes met, he smiled and waved. Froze. My breath caught in my throat, and I immediately shut the blinds. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and called my parents. They told me to call the police. But when I checked the doorbell camera again, he was gone. The house was silent except for the sound of my own pounding heartbeat. Was he still nearby, or had he already left? When the police arrived, they searched the area but didn't find anything unusual. No footprints, no signs of forced entry, nothing. The night passed, and somehow I managed to fall asleep. But the next morning as I stepped outside, my stomach dropped. Right in front of the door, there were muddy footprints, and on top of them, a small piece of paper. You seem fun. I'll come visit again soon. My hands trembled as I picked up my phone and called the police again. Minutes later, a patrol car pulled up in front of my house. 2 officers approached and I handed them the note, recounting everything from the night before. They checked the yard and reviewed the doorbell camera footage, and that's when something strange happened. There was nothing on the footage. No one knocking on the door. No one standing at the window. It was as if the man had never been there at all. One of the officers frowned. The footprints lead up to your door, he said, but there aren't any leading away. A cold shiver ran down my spine. The officers assured me they would increase patrols in the area, but their expressions told me they didn't have much else to offer. After they left, I stood by the door for a long time, unable to move. The house was quiet, but somehow the silence made me even more uneasy. There was no guarantee that next time wouldn't be tonight. It was my first night staying alone in my new apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small 1-bedroom in an older building downtown, the kind of place where the walls were thin and the pipes made strange noises at night. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone when I heard it. A faint scratching sound. At first, I thought it was coming from the walls, probably mice or something, but then I realized it was coming from the air vent near the ceiling. I sat up, staring at it. The sound stopped. Trying to shake it off, I turned off my phone and rolled onto my side. That's when I heard something else. A deep, raspy breath dot. I turned my head slowly toward the vent. My room was dark, but the moonlight outside cast just enough of a glow for me to see it. A pair of eyes staring at me from inside the vent dot. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just lay there, frozen in place, as whoever, whatever, was in there watched me. Then, a voice, hoarse and whispering. I see you. I bolted out of bed and ran for the door, grabbing my phone as I sprinted out of the apartment. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They searched the vents and found a loose panel in the ceiling leading to a crawl space. Inside, they found a dirty sleeping bag, food wrappers, and a knife. Someone had been living in the vents, watching me, waiting. Even after the police assured me that he was gone, I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't. 4 nights after, I barely slept. Every creak, every rustle of the pipes sent my heart racing. I found myself staring at the vents, half expecting to see those eyes again. The worst part? They never caught him. Whoever he was, he vanished. The police said he must have been using the crawl space to sneak in and out of different apartments, staying just long enough to watch. Maybe longer. I moved out the next week, throughout everything that had been in that apartment. But even now, in a different city, in a different building, I still find myself checking the vents before I go to sleep. You never really notice how loud silence can be until you're the only one left to hear it. The flickering fluorescent lights of McAllister's buzzed incessantly, their sickly yellow glows stretching long, distorted shadows across the empty dining area. I wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that night, my reflection warping grotesquely in the stainless steel surface. The security cameras had been dead for weeks, just hollow, black domes staring sightlessly at nothing. The knock came without warning, 3 sharp, deliberate raps against the glass front door that shattered the oppressive quiet. My hands froze mid-wipe, the damp rag slipping from my fingers. No one ever knocked. The lobby had been closed since midnight drive-through only after dark. With the grease-smudged glass, a figure stood motionless in the empty parking lot. Tall. Too tall. His face remained hidden beneath the brim of a McAllister's manager's cap, the shadow swallowing his features whole. "We're closed," I called out, my voice cracking slightly as I made no move toward the door. The figure didn't react, didn't move, just stood there, unnaturally still, as if he hadn't heard me at all. Then, with slow, deliberate movement, he raised one hand and pressed it flat against the glass. My stomach lurched as I saw his fingers, too long, the joints bulging obscenely under the skin like knotted rope. The drive-through headset, clipped to my waist, suddenly crackled to life with a burst of static that made me jump. "Let me in." The voice sounded wrong, guttural and wet, like grease burning on a hot grill. I stumbled back from the door, my pulse hammering in my throat. Outside, the figure tilted his head too far at an angle no human neck should bend, and the flickering streetlight finally illuminated his face. Except it wasn't a face. It was a mask. The cheap plastic McAllister's mascot smile that usually adorned Happy Meal toys, its painted grin stretched impossibly wide. But the eyes behind it were all wrong, black and liquid, leaking down his cheeks in thick, oily streaks. Jason, the fry cook, hadn't seen anything when I rushed into the kitchen. "Probably just some drunk," he muttered, scraping the grill with unnecessary force, the metal spatula screeching against the hot surface. Then the headset crackled again, that same statusy voice slithering through the tiny speaker. "I'm hungry." Jason froze mid-scrape, his shoulders tensing visibly beneath his grease-stained uniform. We both turned slowly toward the drive-through window where the order screen glowed faintly in the dark. No car idled in the lane, no customer waited at the menu board. Just empty asphalt and a flickering neon sign casting erratic shadows across the pavement. Then, slap. A pale hand suddenly pressed against the glass from outside, those same 2 long fingers splaying wide. The mascot mask grinned at us from the darkness, its hollow eye sockets somehow seeing, knowing. Jason screamed, the sound sharp and panicked in the cramped kitchen. From outside came laughter wet and gurgling, like someone drowning in their own fluids. The drive-through speaker exploded with noise, a deafening barrage of banging that shook the entire window in its frame. Bang, bang, bang. The headset shrieked with feedback, the sound drilling into my skull. The banging grew louder, more frenzied, until suddenly... silence. We locked every door with shaking hands, the metal bolts sliding home with finality that did nothing to calm my racing heart. The manager didn't answer his phone, just rang and rang until the voicemail picked up. Then the power died. The emergency lights flickered on with a dull click, bathing the kitchen in pulsing red that made the stainless steel surfaces gleam like fresh blood. That's when we heard it, a soft, insistent scratching from above. I looked up just as one of the ceiling tiles shifted slightly. Something pale and glistening curled through the gap, a finger. Then another. The thing was in the vents, moving with purpose toward the kitchen. Jason bolted for the back door, his sneakers squeaking against the greasy floor. I followed close behind, my breath coming in ragged gasps, but when we reached the exit, the door wouldn't budge. The handle turned freely, but the door remained sealed shut, as if something heavy pressed against it from the outside. Behind us, the ceiling tiles rippled like water, bulging downward with the weight of something moving through the narrow space above. We barricaded ourselves in the walk-in freezer, our breath fogging in the sudden, bone-deep cold. The metal door trembled under our combined weight as we pressed against it, listening to the silence of the kitchen beyond. Then, knock, knock, knock. 3 precise taps against the freezer door, the metal vibrating with each impact. Jason sobbed quietly beside me, his breath hitching in the frigid air. I pressed my back harder against the shelves, my eyes fixed on the door handle as it twitched slightly, testing its resistance. The headset, still clipped to my waist, hissed to life with a burst of static that made us both jump. Found you. The emergency lights cut out, plunging us into absolute darkness. Something heavy dropped from the freezer ceiling, landing in front of us with a sickening wet slap against the concrete floor. In the impenetrable black, the plastic mask's grin glowed faintly, its exaggerated smile stretching impossibly wide as the thing that wore it breathed heavily in the dark. No Jason. No blood. No signs of struggle. Just his spatula, snapped cleanly in half, lying in the middle of the floor, and the headset, still crackling with intermittent static when they picked it up. As for the security camera footage that was supposed to be broken, it had been working perfectly the whole time. The last frame shows me standing alone in the middle of the empty kitchen, the flickering lights casting long shadows across the tile. Wearing the mask, smiling,